After Apple decided it was time to switch from their already well-established PowerPC machines, they decided to go to Intel for their future machines, and in 2006, Apple released their first line of Intel machines. I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, the most notable one of these machines, the original MacBook from 2006. Some people may say that's not the first MacBook, but it is. Before this, Apple named their laptops the iBooks and the PowerBooks. When Apple was sort of redesigning their lineup for Intel, they decided to rename it from iBook to MacBook, and that's where this name came from. As for the first MacBook ever released in 2006, it was a very popular machine at the time, and it changed the future of Macs forever. Going into the 2006 MacBook, Apple took their already established line of iBooks and they upgraded them for a more modern experience. The MacBooks were thinner, lighter, and they featured a 16:10 aspect ratio. They also introduced some key features such as MagSafe and the iSight camera to the laptops. The MacBooks felt a lot more full-featured than the iBook G4s did, and on top of the design changes, the Intel processors gave these laptops a major performance gain. This also allowed for the MacBooks to run Windows, which is something that no PowerPC machine could natively do, and this is something that current Apple Silicon machines cannot do. Another notable aspect where the MacBook changed was the keyboard. The newer style keyboard on the MacBook was actually really nice. It felt nicer to type on, and it's a lot more solid than the iBook's already good keyboard, and in my opinion, it's a lot better than that butterfly keyboard that Apple was doing around 2016 to 2019 also. The iBook G4 was missing a lot of features by the time it was discontinued, such as the iSight camera, the new aspect ratio from the PowerBooks, and the IR sensor used for front row on some of the other PowerPC machines. The MacBook corrected all of those issues, and that's one of the many reasons why the MacBook feels so much newer than the iBook, despite only being a year newer than the newest iBook G4. There were a lot of things that the PowerBook had that the iBook didn't, and the MacBook helped close that gap a little more in terms of the feature set. In 2024, these first-generation MacBooks really can't do all that much. The model I have here is stuck on macOS Lion, although newer models can go up to El Capitan. The original 1,1s could only go up to Snow Leopard. That means that the original 1,1 MacBooks only got 2 major software updates. That's really interesting. Could you imagine an M1 MacBook Pro that did not natively support macOS Sonoma? The reason why these earlier MacBooks were dropped from support so quickly was due to the 32-bit architecture that the Intel Core Duo processor ran on. While it has been pretty hard to find a browser for these machines for probably half a decade now, there are some certain legacy browsers that can work on macOS Snow Leopard and Lion, although Windows 7 is a decent option to get these machines working a little better. Installing Windows does not fix all of the issues as they still run on a processor that's 18 years old, and honestly, I can't even get drivers installed properly on Windows. I don't know if that's an Apple issue, a Windows issue, or just this computer, but the first generation MacBook essentially took an already good product, the iBook G4, and made it into an even better product. Apple continued the MacBook lineup until around 2010, and it was brought back in 2015 after that for about 4 years until being discontinued, most likely permanently. I don't think that the lineup will ever be brought back. Looks like the MacBook Air is Apple's new consumer device. But these MacBooks were one of Apple's great creations from the 2000s, and I think it really shaped what modern Macs would become. Comparing this machine to a modern MacBook Pro is kind of crazy because there's a lot of ports on this 2006 MacBook. Back when it came out in 2006, pretty much every one of these ports was high-end. It had Apple's DVD drive, it had FireWire 400, it was excluding FireWire 800, which was actually kind of annoying to see, as FireWire 800 was already on the PowerBook G4s, but it did not come to the MacBook, and it had USB 2, which was pretty much standard for the time, as USB 3 still had a couple of years until it really took off. And while every Mac nowadays is made out of aluminum, this thing was made out of polycarbonate, which actually held up surprisingly well. I have seen a couple of these polycarbonate machines that look really bad, but this white model right here actually looks really nice, even if it was pretty heavily used up until 2021, I believe. Here's another interesting fact about these machines. These things were so popular that Apple decided to release a black model. Unfortunately, people just bought the white model because it was more iconic, and the black MacBook really did not last that long. I think it didn't even last 2 years before being discontinued. Of course, nowadays, I see more space gray and space black MacBooks than anything, but back then, the white polycarbonate MacBook was pretty much a status symbol. My 2023 MacBook Pro does carry some of the same features as this computer. This was the first Mac to support MagSafe, which was used for about 10 years, then brought back again in 2021, which just proves how good of a technology MagSafe is. MagSafe 1 had its flaws, but it still works a lot better than some barrel connector would. Besides those software support issues, it's really hard to find anything that's actually wrong with this machine. This really was the perfect MacBook for back in 2006. It wasn't the most powerful laptop on the line, but it was the most refined laptop along with the MacBook Pros, which also took that spot in my opinion. This MacBook did everything properly. It didn't try to add any new gimmicks that weren't going to be continued in later models. So with that said, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, a like would be appreciated. If you want to see more content like this, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. And with that said, goodbye.